Good morning, everyone. My name is Margie Russell, and I'm the Executive Director of NYARM. Welcome to our Elevator Contracts Seminar. This morning, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the management company view and how you prepare in the big scheme of things. And then we're going to go right into the elevator contracts. We do have 2 contracts, and if I could ask you to peruse it throughout the presentations to see if there are specific parts that you tend to have questions on. And then we're going to get into the elevator testing and how that has changed the whole scene and how it has changed the contract relationship among the parties. Our first speaker is Andrew Hirsch, who is the Director of Operations and General Counsel for Lawrence Properties. And if I could ask each of the speakers to just give us a minute on their background. After Mr. Hirsch, we have Richard Matthews from Fujitec Elevator, and then Greg DiNicola from Omega Industries.
I've been asked, I guess, today to speak about, from a management perspective, elevator repair and maintenance contracts, projects. As managers, we're obviously in the service business, and it's important to make sure a building runs smoothly. Obviously, an elevator is a lifeline for many tenants in a building, and it's I guess a source of emotion anytime the elevator is disrupted. So elevator outages for tenants can obviously be an emotional thing. How we go about minimizing the downtime, whether it's from the repair or maintenance, is basically the issue. And important to communicate to the tenants. It's going to ease their bad feelings about it. Truth is, as a manager, have some basic knowledge of the work of elevators, but not the specific technical knowledge. The thing to do is hire experts, right? So, hire a good, reliable elevator company, and important, a third-party independent consultant. I think we're probably going to hear from both of them. I would go as far as the third-party consultant will write specs for an elevator mod, rely heavily on them, and write specs for the maintenance contracts. They're the best people, I guess, to oversee what's going on and to guide you as to what an elevator company should be doing or shouldn't be doing. So the key is, from a management perspective, is to plan. The more you plan, the easier it's going to go, and the less surprises you're going to have along the way. Planning, you want to plan the timing of the modification. If you're taking elevator out of service, is there a better time to do it? Do tenants go away in the summer? Things like that. Just understand your tenants and their needs before you start the project. And the more you plan, the easier it's going to go. You want to obviously minimize the time that the elevators take. Things that long lead times, obviously the ordering machine or the cosmetics. A cab is typically a long lead time item, and something that if you're dealing with boards, something that can take a long time to put in the agree on. So basically, it's just it's relying on your experts, communicating with the tenants, and planning as much as you can the aspects of the job. It's going to be inconvenient to the tenants any way you look at it, and the more you can explain to them the need for the outage and the process, and communicate with them obviously along the way where you are. If there's any delay, things are going smoothly, and planning staff issues. If you have elderly people in the building and you need to help them up with packages or whatever, that's basically it. So our job is just to coordinate between the board, the tenants, and the experts. Make sure everything's going smoothly.
I in the planning, I was once managing a building that was a condominium where most of the apartments were still owned by the sponsor. And so when one elevator shut down, he was ready, willing, and able to spend overtime for everything to get fixed immediately, as opposed to, and that was, and I thought, well, let's let him come in the morning and let it be covered under the elevator contract, as opposed to approving the extra. And so, but if it was a co-op building, there would have been no question. That elevator would have stayed down, and we would just picked up with it in the morning to be covered under an elevator contract. So, can you think back to any situations that you've had?
Yeah, well, I've got it.
If you could just...
Sorry, we've got a rental building that was down as a result of Hurricane Sandy. One elevator, and the elevator was down. And in the modification contract, we negotiated double shifts overtime to get it back up and running. So whether it's a co-op or sponsor condominium or a rental building, it's an option. And you just need to weigh the financial aspects of the elevator being down longer or spending the extra money on double shifts.
So in negotiating any elevator contract, so I would say that it was like almost a pre-plan. I mean, we knew you had to get this thing up and running. But we could be surprised when someone says, well, I have an open house on Sunday for a $5 million apartment. We might, as managers, might want to say, oh, maybe want to give them the ability to spend the overtime to have the second elevator running, this kind of thing. So,
right. Well, we'll talk about the elevator contracts, but in the elevator contracts, it gives you the ability to have repairs done overtime.
Well,
and as a manager or co-op, you can pass it along to the tenants.
right. So, but I'm saying in managing property managers is for us to realize, where we normally might have just let it go to the next morning or until Monday morning, and say, well, we have one elevator down this weekend, that we might want to make that phone call, or I never made that phone call to the sponsor, and he was very upset because he's always renting or selling apartments. So it's, it may be Friday at 11 o'clock, and we may say, okay, we're just going to put up the signs. We do have to think through what's the dynamic of every building, because there might be someone, so even though it's covered in the contract, it's...
It's a good thing to think about, and that there is an option. Remember there's an option, and then just figure out how to pay for it, whether it's worth it.
Exactly. All right, that you...
Well,
okay, so that gets us started on, the overall aspect.
All right, my name is Richard Matthews. I'm from Tech Elevator Company. I've been in the elevator business for about 21 years, all on the service side of the business. Worked for this elevator company, this is 12, and now I'm regional sales manager for Tech Elevator, Hamlin, New York, and New Jersey. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the maintenance contract and answer any questions. One of the first things you want to do is make sure that you've got a full maintenance contract. There's a lot of different kinds of full maintenance contracts out there, but full maintenance contract basically covers all your parts. Mechanic comes there at regular time to do preventive maintenance, and what you want to do as a building manager and owner is just want to make sure that you have some kind of a check-in where the guys are coming in there every month doing their preventive maintenance. You also have in the motor room what's called a lot book. In New York City, you'll have to do the Cat 1 and Cat 5 tests. So you can go there, check that, and make sure the guys are doing their check-offs every month and that the maintenance is being done. It wouldn't hurt to have a monthly meeting with your mechanic or your salesperson or account manager and just talk about what's happening in the building and the elevators. But full maintenance contract is the way to go. With that being said, preventive maintenance basically is to protect your investment. Make sure equipment's being properly maintained, guys coming there, checking on the doors, riding the elevators, checking light bulbs, going into the motor room, looking at checking the ropes, the shiv, doing the normal cleaning and painting, checking the pit equipment, and talking to the building to see what's going on. Most importantly, you got to make sure the guys coming to your building every single month, that you have them check in your building and check out of your building. A lot of the complaints is that the mechanics have too many elevators on their route. Wouldn't hurt if you have your monthly meeting with your mechanic to sit down and find out how many units he has on his route. The units could be low in numbers, but depending on the kind of equipment, for instance, a guy may have like say 35 elevators. He's got old gearless cars, a lot of stops, requires a lot of work. So the most important thing is the hours on the route. Mechanic has 40 hours in a week. He's got like 4.3 weeks in a month, 172 hours of maintenance he's going to be able to do. But also keep in mind, the guy's got to answer callbacks, guys go on vacation. So I tell you, that monthly meeting with your mechanic, with your elevator company, find out what's going on, the mechanic, the supervisor, the account manager, really gives you a feel of what's going on and also makes them more accountable. Obviously, with the elevator contract, if you've had a car, elevators for like 20 years, 20 years is kind of like the number people use to look at modernizing the equipment. So your third-party company or your consultant, they come by and do their evaluations. Talk about what are the things that we should be doing over the next couple of years. A 5-year capital plan is something that a lot of my sales reps do for their customers. Is put together a capital plan where they go in the building, they do a survey with a supervisor or mechanic, and they put together a plan for the next couple of years to do upgrades. Because equipment does wear out over time, and we do that for the customers because they need to plan their budget for the next couple of years. There was a question about, I'm going to read the question and I'm going to try to answer the question. It says, it appears that the large elevator companies are short-staffed and only have time to address service calls. The neglect to properly address preventive maintenance only increases the amount of service calls. It will be wise for management companies to hire an elevator consultant that inspects the equipment and stays on top of the elevator companies and makes sure that they're holding up their end of the contract. When I came into the industry in 1984, there were no consultants in the industry. I stayed for 13 years, came back after a few years, and every commercial building in New York City has a consultant. Most of the residential buildings in the city, they have a consultant. That probably came from the elevator companies. As time went on, there were really more and more profit concerns instead of just quality concerns. So guys did get overloaded over a period of time. They did cut back their resources because they looked at the bottom line a little more than normal. That was the way things went in the late 80s, early 90s. And consultants would become the watchdogs to make sure the elevator companies are kind of doing their jobs. So being an elevator contractor, I think the way things are going right now, that's really the way to go. And we look at it at Tech Elevator Company as the consultants as one of our partners. I talk about the 3 C's, the consultant, the company, and the customer. We all have to work together for the building, whether it's residential, commercial, to make sure that that investment is being properly taken care of. And so if there's maintenance that has to be done, we're here to support that. But the elevator consultant has become very necessary, and I would definitely recommend that for any building manager or owner to invest into a consultant. The next question was, no,
If you could repeat the question.
The question was, is it required, although you have to have an elevator consultant? No, it's required in New York City, you have to have a maintenance contract.
The category 1, category 5 tests that are now required, mandated consultant.
Andrew, if you want to just use the microphone to answer. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the mandated test that came in 2009 was that you have to have a third-party company witness us doing the category 1 and category 5. So, you have to hire that third-party company. They work with the elevator company to do the actual testing, whether it's Cat 1 or Cat 5. And the third-party company is the one that files it with the Department of Buildings initially after the tests are done.
So the question is, every building has to hire.
Oh, yeah, Andrew, just a little closer to the
Every
mic.
building has to hire a third-party witness to witness the tests.
Yes.
How often do you see those buildings hiring a consultant aside from the Cat
Well,
1
that's,
and Cat
a
5.
lot, now what's happening is now the third-party companies are also being consulted, because now that's another piece of the business. So if I'm your third-party company, I also now want to be your consultant. Initially, a lot of these third-party companies that came out and do the witnessing were just kind of doing just testing. But because of the demand and a lot of the competition, the price of the testing went down. So now, as the customer, I want to be able to get another source of revenue. So now I want to be your consultant, and I want to be your third-party company. So now I have you for that part of this as well. So that's happening more and more. Is it a conflict? Well, the third, it's a little bit of a conflict, but it's really not. It's not. It's not, because it's two separate things.
Okay, Greg can,
Well,
yeah,
let me
Greg.
answer that. It's really not a conflict because the third-party witness and consultant are both working for you.
Greg, closer into the mic, I'm sorry.
So if you as the owner, you would hire a third party and who can be, so basically the third party is the person who would be working for you. So they're your consultant or they can be your third party. You can use them both the same. If you were in the old days of testing, when the elevator companies were performing their own tests, that's when there was a whole thing that the city didn't like, and that's why they changed to third-party testing. Because now you have the elevator company that was testing their own units. And there was no watchdog eyes relying on that inspector. So that's why the whole third-party thing happened.
And your third party doesn't have to be your consultant. A lot of buildings have one company doing their third party work, another building doing their consulting work. So we have somebody watching over what they're doing. So you can switch up. The third question was, as far as erroneous charges are concerned, the elevator companies always charge to rehang doors when they are off the track. The logic behind the charge is that the problem is caused by someone in the building either hitting, leaning, or kicking the door. It turns out that this is not always the case. More times than not, it's caused by malfunction of the door operators rather than vandalism. Having cameras in your elevators can help with this. Well, it kind of answers the question. Well, a lot of doors don't come off the track if they're getting regular maintenance. They don't come off the track. As far as erroneous charges, we talked about full maintenance contracts. Full maintenance contracts can cover overtime callbacks or not. It can cover testing or not. There's a lot of things that you can put into a full maintenance contract that are not in other contracts. All of our contracts now have the Cat 1 and the Cat 5 included in the contract. We try to push for the customers to take overtime callbacks into their contract so they don't get hit with extra charges. It's hard to budget when you get a bill every month for, say, $2,000 a month, and every month you keep getting these extra charges for different things here and here. Doors being knocked off the track, damage and water and fire, you can't control that. But a lot of the nuisance is supposed to come at night. Guys come in here to answer call back at night and you get hit with a $20 charge for premium time or for straight time, or whatever it is. We try to sell foolproof contracts as much as we can. A lot of customers don't want to go for the overtime as part of the contract because they don't have a lot of calls. Doesn't make sense to have it in the contract. But wherever possible, we try to put all that stuff into the contract. This particular contract that's here has the overtime built into it. I think it's I have an addendum at the end where we added overtime to the contract. Yes, at the end, we put that into the contract.
So I understand that doors are pretty much the biggest issue when it comes to elevator shutdowns.
Open and close all the time,
Yeah,
right?
Andrew, you just have to come straight in. Sorry.
Sorry, I have one.
I know.
So I guess my question is, what maintenance is included in a full-service contract as to the doors? Is it cleaning, contacts, is it the rails? Is there
Door
anything
locks,
else?
you gotta constantly, monitor your door locks, clean the tracks, the hangers, make sure the doors are opening, closing at the right speeds, and not opening too fast, closing too hard, where people wanna walk in and they wanna stop the elevator doors. I mean, there's just things that, you have to educate your tenants on how best to use those particular elevators.
Are there adjustments done monthly by your company?
Well, the doors should be checked every month. If you're looking at, say, for instance, a residential building, the guy should be there every month checking the doors, should ride the elevators. Commercial building, the guy might be there every week. Freight cars, you can't always get to the freight car because someone's always using the freight car. So it's really on a building-by-building basis. But in a residential building, the guy should be there every month checking the doors. The guy should ride the elevator. In a high-rise, Class A, Class B building, typically the guy should be there at least twice a month You should ride the elevators, and you as the tenant or the riding public should have someone that you can talk to, communicate something wrong with the elevators. Make a note of it so the guy comes into the building. So you can't stop at every floor.
Is that maintenance written into the contract?
Some of the new contracts have performance guarantees where you got to spend X number of hours on the elevator by month. And then the elevator companies have to provide the documentation as to how often the guy's been to the building. Within that documentation, it'll say, okay, I went through the door locks, went through the motor room. There should be specifics in that report that you get every month as to what's being done. Besides what's happening, the check chart, the motor room. But that's really just, a guy could go into the motor room and just, no doubt, you could be a pair of eyes for the mechanic, you know, so when the guy comes to the building, you should talk to the super, talk to the chief engineer, talk to the guy at the front desk and say, hey, what's going on, anything that I should know about. I tell you,
Okay, if you could, Andrew, if you could ask,
I was gonna say, is it a good idea to have, for you to train a super on how to clean sills and is there a specific maintenance a super can do on a door to keep it more consistent?
I mean, there's a little liability if we're gonna go tell the building super to start pinning the saddles, the sills. I'm sure the guy can go there on his own, but I don't think that you wanna have that come from your elevator company. And if that's something that he does as part of his regular maintenance in the building, that's fine, but I don't think the elevator company wanna be in the business of advising people how to take care of the elevator. Now, guys go inside the car, the cabs, the rails, the car doors, the guys wipe and clean that up, that's fine. That's 9 times out of 10 that's not covered by the contract. If you look at any contract, you look at exclusions, car enclosure, ceiling, the handrails, the car panels, the car bodies, that stuff is not covered by the contract. That's not something that an elevator company can maintain so that it doesn't break down. It's just going to wear and tear and then we're going to have to replace it over time.
Okay, I'd like to answer that question kind of in reverse. Are there any extra repairs that might have to be done because you say the building didn't clean the threshold? You see what I'm saying? So while you're not saying it in the contract that they have to, are there common extra charges that's because the staff was remiss on something?
Well, I mean, you get hospitals where you get excessive dust or debris coming down the hatch on a freight car, or hospitals where you get stuff coming down the shaft where you have to do an annual clean down on the equipment when they go in the building, and that will be considered an extra. If there's excessive dust, dirt, debris coming down the hatch, then that's something that we would go to the customer and recommend we do a clean down, but it's going to affect the operation of the elevators. You got stuff on top of the cars, door tracks, the saddles, is going to affect the operation, and we want to get the customer to pay for that. That will be an extra that I would definitely say is definitely fair to go to the customer and actually take care of that item. But you got to document all those things. It's just not go proposal from the customer. That's why I say I stress that you have those monthly meetings with your elevator companies and make them accountable to you and your building as to what's happening.
Another question about that. Every Cat 5 or Cat 1, usually the city comes up with a number of findings that we need to change the lots, or the levels, or now the old parts actually have a home. All these changes get done. Is there any way for you to know before what is required, whether the floors are coming up at 8%?
Well,
Okay, it's a long question.
yeah, they're running out of things to charge you for. I'm trying to think, 2014, but 2004, 2015 was mainly escalators, nothing elevators that I can think of in 2014. Most of the stuff was 2012, 13, 10, but 2013 with elevators, unless you guys can think of anything that I missed with Cat 1, Cat 5 code upgrades, I don't think there's anything in 2013 for elevators.
Just the pistons.
Pistons?
And hydros. Single wall pistons are not allowed.
Yes.
I have 2 questions, please. The first one is, when you're talking about a full-service contract, can you give us, I'm looking at those blindly, can you give me any kind of idea in the percentage cost difference between what would have been a traditional contract and a full-service contract? Can you give me any kind of guidelines?
Well, your full maintenance contract, basically, the Okay, the language you want to look for is that we will repair and replace these major items, you know, the ropes, the shifts, the machines, the motors, the brakes, repair or replace. You got to watch the exclusions, you got to watch the prorations.
What's the cost difference for something
The
like
cost,
this?
yeah, well, the cost difference, my old rule of thumb I still follow right now is that the limited service contracts are about 65% of a full maintenance contract. Back in my oldest days, Otis still has it, they still have what's called like it's called OS, Otis maintenance or OM, and full maintenance and limited service contract where it doesn't cover repairs, doesn't cover repairs. That's the main thing. They don't repair, they don't replace the components of the elevator. That's the major difference in terms of the full maintenance contract, where they can still take a look at it and put oil on it, and observe it, and monitor and check. You know, check and monitor is two different things. You know, not a lot of work in checking and monitoring, but it's repair and replace what you want to look for in the contract. And look at your exclusions and see what's being excluded from the contract. And look at prorations. There's a lot of little things they do with proration. For instance, like you get a 5-year contract and the guy prorates you for 10 years. So over 10 years, the ropes go in year 1 of a 5-year contract, well, you're going to pay 90% of the bill, and they're going to pay 10% of the bill. So be careful with those long prorations. If we take a contract on for 5 years, we're going to prorate the ropes, then we'll do a 5-year proration. So if something goes wrong in the first year, you're 80%, we're 20%. Then again, you have your consultant that's probably going to be in the building too. Use them as a check and balance to make sure that there's agreement on that work.
And
Yes.
The second question I have, please, is, so we have our elevator inspected, and then we get bills for the repairs having to be done to the elevator because of things were found, problems during the inspection. So how do we prevent that from happening? Do we have to just get a better contract, or?
That's the further to say. You got to make sure that you have a foolproof contract. I mean, there's a lot of contracts out there on old paper that don't cover repairs. I mean, like the old, I don't want to mention the elevator company, but they've been bought up by a bigger company now. A lot of their contracts are out there on old paper where everything that had to be replaced or repaired, you have to pay for it, especially in the residential market.
Okay,
Especially
also-
residential market.
Yeah, and also, what is your opinion for a company that did the was responsible for maintaining our elevators, but at the inspection time, then they said we needed all these additional repairs. Do you think that was just because of the contract, or do you think maybe the company was somewhat at fault?
I think you need to look at your contract and your elevator company. I mean, I tell my salespeople, and when I'm here today, I said we look at all our contracts, make sure they understand what the contracts are, and push for the full maintenance contract. Even though the rate might be higher monthly, you don't get nickel and dime long term. And we have kind of on old paper, like every month, we get a list of customers that got to get their contracts price adjusted on the anniversary of the contract. And so, let's say there's 40 accounts for that particular month. So we have to go through every different contract. Some contracts have fixed increases, some have no increases, and then some are on old paper. If they're on old paper, get there in front of the customer, sit down, talk to them, explain. A lot of elevator companies don't want to come to you and tell you that you're on old paper, but they're afraid you might cancel the contract. And so, that's a chance that we're taking. But I stress, it's on old paper, it's expired, be proactive, get in front of the customer and explain. A lot of times that old paper doesn't cover repairs. A lot of those old companies make a lot of money because they got a contract, but you got to pay for all the extras. And that's how a lot of them are built that way. I'm making money on the extras, and then obviously modernizing the equipment.
So a few
Yes, sir.
other things to consider when negotiating a contract, aside from costs, labor, parts, materials, time of service. You know, when does the mechanic going to come? Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, is that included in the contract? A few other thoughts that you might want to consider in your contract is a cancellation clause. If you're not happy with the elevator company, there has to be a way.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Good morning, good afternoon already. I would think there would have to be a way to cancel a contract, so you want to get out. Make sure there's a cancellation clause. Another thing to think about is that the contract doesn't have an automatic renewal. Back in the day, that was very common. A lot of contracts don't have it today, but it might get snuck in, so just be careful with that. Just some advice.
Well, the rollover is there, but you can make it a fixed date. I mean, for instance, a 5-1 or a 5-5, it's there. It's not enforceable in New York State. Most people know that already. New Jersey, you can still roll over a contract. It's not enforceable. But with the cancellation clause, I mean, if you're going to sign a contract with an elevator company, you got to ideally want to dance with them for at least 3 years. The guy's going to tell you that I'm going to repair your machine, your armature, your ropes, your shiv, your motor. You can't be on a one-year contract. 'Cause I tell you the truth, that doesn't work to your benefit either, because if they're there for 1 year, they can nurse it along because there's no commitment. There's no skin in the game for them. But for 3 years, for 5 years, they're going to make that commitment to spend the money doing the non-billable repair work. That's work that's covered by the contract that you don't get a charge for. But if you're on a one year deal, those guys they're not going to go there and change those ropes. They don't have to, unless you have your elevator consultant breathing down their neck, or if there's something they can get away with as far as a repair, they're going to just, duct tape it, keep it going until the contract's up. So really, I think it's to your benefit to really get a long-term deal and have something in there say, hey, if there's non-performance by the elevator company, and you could document non-performance, then you can get out of the contract. But to go into a short-term and compromise short-term for long-term, into that equipment, I don't think that makes sense. So I think you want to look at a 3-year, 5-year window with your elevator company, and then just hold their feet to the fire and make sure they're doing their jobs. And if they're not doing their jobs and you want to get rid of them, they get it.
Well, that's why I think the contract has to have a cancellation clause with cause.
Yes.
Give it for years. If it's not working out, you have a reason to get rid of them.
Definitely, with cause. They shouldn't fight you on that.
The other thing is when you negotiate contracts, especially, it usually comes around the time when you're doing a modernization, where you start interviewing a lot of companies. Some companies have proprietary systems, some don't. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit, advantages, disadvantages?
Well, the way it's going right now is that 9 times out of 10, any bid that comes out for modernization, they're saying non-proprietary equipment. And we do, on our modernizations, we always bid according to the spec, which is not proprietary. We always give our price for our equipment typically at a discounted number. So if they're looking to save a little bit of money and live with us for the next, say, 10, 15, 20 years, we'll give them our number. But 9 times out of 10, it's non-proprietary equipment. No one wants to be stuck with, they want to have the options. They want to have the options of being able to send their equipment out to bid and get the best price for a full maintenance contract. So it's becoming harder and harder on modernization to get your equipment in on the bid. I mean, as for Otis, Tradesmen, Fujitech, it's all the same. I mean, from a customer's point of view, I think that's what you want. You want to go non-proprietary so you have more people bidding on the service contract.
We have another question over
Yeah,
here.
hi. For your company, a typical route in Manhattan, how many elevators or pieces of equipment would one tech be responsible for?
Okay. It's 2 things. It's hours and it's units. But the thing with us is our market, our mix of elevators, a lot of high-rise. So we have a low number of units, 33, 35 cars in a route. There's a lot of deals equipment. I mean, I got a guy, I just left 425 Lex. He's got 425 Lex, 14 cars, 11 dealerless cars. He's got 135 57th Street. He's got 9 dealerless cars. So his numbers are low. But a guy in Jersey might have 60 cars and might have 45 hydros and 15 geared cars. So it's the mix of units. So Fujitech, our product mix, a lot of high-rise, a lot of residential. So the unit number is low, but because of the equipment, the hours are coming in around the same. I did the 70 hours a month per mechanic. But our mechanics by units is very low, probably 35, 40 cars a man. I just gave that sheet any day about an hour ago. But so we're like 35, 40 cars. So it's hard to measure that when I say that to you, because some routes, without mentioning companies, they have 80 cars. We have 35, 40 cars.
Does that, when they have that many cars to be responsible for it, does it allow them to do sufficient preventive maintenance?
The supervisors know, the answer is probably no. They try to do is get creative by throwing a helper into the route, throwing a troubleshooter into the route, and free the guy up so he doesn't have to spend time doing a lot of troubleshooting. He'll spend time doing maintenance. I mean, I'm saying, but I came from some of those companies that do stuff like that. They have a lot of units on their route, and then they try to, you know, massage it so the guy's not spending, you can't do service on 85 cars adequately and go in the building and spend time troubleshooting. So they give them some support. But the answer is no, you can't do it. It's too much, especially in New York City. Because even when you don't have the high rise, you still have just walking around time. You just can't, you know, walking in the building, checking in, checking out, getting to the motor room. It's a lot of downtime.
And I think everyone would recognize that the better the PM program that you have, the less calls and downtime that you're going to have.
Well, that's the whole approach. That's what you're paying your money for, is that the guy that can maximize the amount of time he's in your building doing preventive maintenance, not answering callbacks, not doing shutdowns. Now, repair work is a good thing. I mean, you know, because every so often these got to be replaced, but non-builder repairs, what you want to see. You want to see stuff that's happening on an emergency down, and we got to come here and, you know, change roofs because we haven't checked them in, you know, 6 months or a year. So it's twofold. Yeah, you want to maximize the maintenance to the guys in your building, and you want to know how many units are on his route, and you want to know not just the units, but the mix of the units, because the mix is really important. You have high-rise, low-rise cars, you know, geared, gearless, hydros. So the mix is important. When I give you that, that's why I gave you that low number. That guy's got a lot of high-rise stuff, so it takes a lot of time. That's like having, say, 60 cars in another route. So that's what kind of maximizes the amount of time the guy's in the building, doing maintenance, so you increase the uptime and minimize your downtime on your elevator.
And that then brings us really to the modernization, because the good preventative maintenance is hopefully going to limit the number of times over how many decades you have to replace or modernize our elevators. So can you just, I know there's no average modernization, but a complete redo of, say, a 10-story building, an elevator, would cost how much? And what I'm getting at is it's not how much it costs, it's if you have to spend that every 15 years, every 20 years, that by preventative maintenance, obviously, you're increasing the useful life of any building system by using 20%. It's an easy remark, but certainly 15%.
Well, a lot of the mod stuff that's coming out now is equipment that's 20 years old, 25 years old. And the big push is to reduce energy costs. So that's before you went from relay logic to microprocessor solid state equipment, okay? So now you got your solid state equipment out there. You still have a lot of relay stuff out there too. But what you're trying to do is people want to go green, they want to, you know, go LED on the whole lights, they want to go AC gearless. So right now, a lot of the modernization packages are all about, you know, making them faster and better traffic handling and stuff like that. But it's also green is the big thing that people are really interested in, going green. So again, like we talk about doing the 5-year capital plan, stuff like that, is we're going to the customers and we're making those kind of recommendations that they can put this stuff into their budget in the next 3 to 5 years. The answer, the question, it's a 20 to 25 years. It's what they look at as a window to modernize. I remember like the old Otis 401s that went in 1986. That's now 25 years now. Those cars now being modernized now. I see a lot of them being modernized. So the time is 20, 25 years. It's kind of like the benchmark that people look for to start to modernize their equipment. The consultants all know when it was all installed. They know what it is, and that's when they're putting it out there. Right?
Thank you, thank you. And then when we finish with all the speakers, we'll come back with any questions. Thank you very much. That was excellent.